In the frigid town of Greenridge, Wisconsin, a young man named Alex Thompson found himself in a harsh winter ordeal that left an indelible mark on his memory. When 19-year-old Alex decided to leave the familiar confines of his parents' home in Illinois, he took refuge in the cold embrace of Wisconsin. The tantalizing possibility of being near a friend drew him there, and his journey into the unknown began. Greenridge, though not a bustling metropolis, had a certain charm in its snowy landscapes and quiet streets. However, Alex soon discovered that the freezing cold of Wisconsin was a different beast from his home state. Winter was relentless, unforgiving, and tested his resilience in ways he never imagined. Experiencing financial hardship, Alex found himself living in a not-so-great neighborhood. The quaint charm of Greenridge faded as he began to navigate the harsh reality of his new surroundings. Working at a local retail store became his salvation, and his daily commute was by bus, especially in winter, when he had to walk from the bus stop to his apartment through relentless snow and bitter cold. On one of the fateful December days, the city was covered with heavy snowfall, creating an enchanting and at the same time treacherous winter wonderland. A New Year's Eve mood was in the air, bringing a serene yet eerie atmosphere. The store, which was usually bustling with activity, was unusually sparse, which made the day somewhat weary. As Alex waited for his shift to end and return home, he noticed an oddity through the bus window. A man was walking down the sidewalk carrying a gallon jug of iced tea and shouting incoherently while waving the jug around. The man's attention was fixed on the bus, and his unintelligible shouts brought nervousness to the serene snowy scene. Getting off at the stop, Alex felt the crunch of freshly fallen snow beneath his feet, a sensation imprinted in his memory. The howling wind and falling snow created an otherworldly atmosphere. To his surprise, a strange man walking on the sidewalk followed him, and his strange screaming did not stop in the frosty air. Instinctively, Alex tried to dodge the stranger, turning down different streets to lose sight of him. However, the persistent stranger followed his every step, becoming more and more anxious. The man's strange behavior increased Alex's anxiety, and an unspoken sense of danger lingered in the cold winter air. Convinced that he was being followed, Alex quickened his step to get to his two-story house as quickly as possible. The unsettling realization that the stranger wasn't giving up increased his fear. The only consolation at this point was the prospect of getting to a safe house, away from the stranger's unsettling presence. Gasping with fear, Alex ran into a house that wasn't his own and locked the door tightly. Peeking through the small window in the door, he was shocked to see the stranger, still holding a jug of iced tea, heading towards the house. The situation escalated when the stranger demanded entry, insisting that he lived in the house. Alex, not knowing how to act in this strange situation, refused to open the door. In response, Alex began desperately calling the police. While the stranger relentlessly attacked the door, there was an unexpected turn of events outside. A second man appeared on the scene, who, as it later turned out to be Alex's neighbor from another apartment. A heated argument ensued between the two, which gave Alex a temporary respite. When the neighbor managed to chase the intruder away, Alex went outside to tell him about the strange incident. By a strange coincidence, Alex learned that the stranger had previously lived in the same apartment as his neighbor. The eviction was due to a terrible psychological condition caused by a mental disorder, and Alex was horrified to realize what may have influenced his erratic behavior that day. A winter day in Greenridge, Wisconsin, tested Alex's resilience in unexpected ways, unraveled a web of strange connections, and left him with the tale of an encounter with a man driven mad and a town shrouded in an otherworldly winter enchantment. Michael didn't learn to drive when he went to school, as many people do. He had no interest in it at all. When he got his first apartment in the same town where he grew up, he started taking the bus, or walk around town, which took a little time. But one day he got into an argument with his boss and quit. He tried to find a new job. The job he found, he could take the bus and even rode a bicycle from time to time. For a year or two it was like that. But when he turned 22, he decided it was finally time to learn to drive. The winter was the only weekend day when he couldn't ride his bike. It was a 5-mile ride, and it snowed so hard in the winter that it was difficult to bike there and back. He got his driver's license in the fall, just before the winter storms. His parents got him a small Toyota truck. Of course, at that point he stopped taking the bus and commuted back and forth to work every day. But one of the inconveniences was that now that he wasn't tied to when the bus ran during the week, he would take different shifts from time to time. So, on several occasions he'd come home very late at night. So, the night this story happened, he was working one of those late shifts. He probably wasn't going to get off until after midnight. When he got to work, he was told there was going to be a blizzard. He got a little scared. It was his first time driving in the snow. And where he lived, snow could be very, very heavy, especially in the first fall of the year. The snow would start falling after sunset, and it had to be a very heavy snow. I think that and the fact that it was the first snow really hurt business that night. He recalls that a lot of the employees were sent home early because not many customers were coming into the store. For the last few hours, there were no customers in the store at all. He spent most of that time in the restaurant's dining room, looking out the window where the snow kept falling and falling, building up and up. Snowplows came out, but they could barely keep up with the heavy snowfall that was piling up on the roads. Finally, it was time to run home. He was getting very scared. So, he had nothing to look forward to driving. He didn't know much about the truck, but it was such a small truck. And it wasn't long before he discovered that it wasn't really suited for driving in the snow. It kept going into a skid, he assumed, because it was such a light truck, and it went into a skid several times. As a novice driver, it took everything he had to keep the truck on the road, and it wasn't working. About halfway home, he had a terrible skid and the truck went into a ditch, and the road was pretty deserted. He put it in reverse, got out of the snow, and did his best to push the truck back onto the road. He did his best, but he couldn't get the car out of the ditch. He got frustrated very quickly. A couple cars drove by, but they didn't stop to offer him help. But after a while, someone did stop. But it wasn't the most pleasant experience. The guy was kind of scary looking and told him he would help him get the car out for $50. He said he didn't have that kind of money, but thanked him for the offer anyway. Oddly enough, the guy decided to help him for free. It was somewhat unexpected, but not unpleasant. After they got the truck out, he thanked the guy. But then the guy told him that he had to pay him $50 for his help. He again replied that he didn't have that kind of money. In response, he realized he had said something wrong. "You may not have that kind of money, but you clearly have it," he told him. "You can give it to me or I can send both your truck and you to the ditch." He was shocked, but didn't know how to respond. He just told the guy that he misunderstood him and that he didn't have the money. When he did that, the guy went back to his truck. Michael figured the guy would just drive away, but he saw the guy reach into the trunk and pull out a tire iron. He then started walking in his direction. Michael then jumped into his truck as fast as he could. This guy was crazy. He tried to drive away from him as fast as he could. The guy smashed the tire iron into the side of Michael's truck. As he tried to pull away, the tire iron caught the driver's side glass and shattered it. Michael was hit with shards of glass. The glass was scary, but not as scary as the thought of Michael getting caught. He thought the guy might follow him, but if he did, he didn't notice. He made it to his apartment complex and got into his apartment with no problem. The window had to be covered with something to keep it from being snowed in. He didn't have a chance to check on the guy or find out who he was. On the positive side, he did not run into him again. Before the Andersons split up, my mother used to always take us out for Halloween. After the separation, with my mom struggling financially, my father gained custody of my older sister and me. He was constantly occupied with work or drowning in self-pity, so he didn't bother taking us trick-or-treating on Halloween. My sister lost interest in it much sooner than I did, and after a year, if I wanted to go, I had to venture out alone. I'm not really complaining though. I didn't mind going out by myself. At that age, I wasn't particularly outgoing, and the divorce left me quite melancholic. I hadn't made many friends, so I spent a lot of time in solitude. Given my introverted nature, some of the other kids gave me a hard time. I won't go as far as saying I was bullied, as I never got into fights or felt genuinely threatened. But I didn't fit in or get along with my peers either. During that Halloween, I was 11 years old, and my older sister was 14. I can't recall what she was up to that night, but I can tell you that our dad was fast asleep on the couch. He hadn't bothered buying any Halloween candy and deliberately kept the porch light off to ward off potential trick-or-treaters. I always found that behavior pretty lousy, but there's not much I can do or say about it now. These days, living on my own, I make sure to stock up on candy and generously distribute it to every kid at my door. The strangest thing happened that night. We were hit by an early morning snowstorm, a first for me. It snowed heavily, prompting the cancellation of trick-or-treating. That, however, wasn't the scariest part of the night. Just kidding. I was disappointed about missing out on trick-or-treating, but the early snowstorm was fascinating. I headed to my room, watched TV, and gazed out of the window as the snow continued to fall. At one point, I got up to go to the bathroom. As I returned to my room, I noticed someone standing in the darkness. My lights were off, and I was engrossed in somewhat spooky TV shows, but there was definitely someone near my bed. However, this mysterious figure only lingered for a moment before swiftly crawling under my bed. I stood there, initially assuming it was my sister playing a Halloween prank. I asked her to stop, but there was no response. I urged her to come out, but again, no response. On my third attempt, I heard a voice behind me. "What are you telling me to stop doing?" I jumped when I realized my sister was behind me. I informed her about the intruder in my room who had ducked under the bed. My sister switched on the light, inspected under the bed, and then told me there was no one there. I insisted there was and suspected she and a friend were pranking me. When I peered under the bed, expecting a scare, nothing was there except a few scattered toys. I swore to my sister, and I swear to you now, that I indeed saw someone in my room and watched them go under my bed. My sister believed me and proposed that it might be a phenomenon known as a shadow person.